Did we?
We
So
lose
this
Charlie
is a
all the
very
time.
fun episode. I'm excited for it. Episode 91 with Zach Porter from Acute Angling, an exotic guide and traveling. Well, I don't want to say traveling service, but guiding service out of Brazil. But I know you guys also do stuff in Argentina, so I'm excited to kind of talk about that and do that. But we just lost Charlie as we were going live, so he should be back soon enough. But all in all, we're going to kind of step out of the realm of California here and saltwater bass and jump into a new fishery, which I'm really excited for, just because these are fish that I tend to see mainly on the internet, on TV, behind a screen, I should say. So it's exciting to get firsthand experience and firsthand stories about everything that we're going to learn today.
Wonderful.
And
And
in the
thank you so
meantime,
much for having me on here. I'm looking forward to chatting with you guys. This is going to be fun.
I think one of the appeals for all of us, especially in the inshore calico scene, which is what most of our audience is we're doing a lot of artificial, a lot of cast and retrieve, a lot of high volume casting. And when you watch the Amazon stuff, it's like, that's all stuff I'm doing. Like,
Yep.
it's not like, oh, I need to learn that fishing style. It's like these guys are doing what I'm doing and targeting crazy stuff.
Exactly. Yep. For all your peacock bass fishing, you're just going to use artificials, whether that's, you know, hard baits or soft plastics or jigs. I mean, it's very similar to what you guys are doing out there on the coast.
which is actually one of the questions that I was thinking that I wanted to ask a little bit about it because there's so much crossover between freshwater and saltwater bass is just how much can be applied from our fishery and something that may be a little bit more common to us down in the rainforest and Brazil in general.
Sure. And so just to be honest, I've only caught a couple calico bass. I only went fishing down there with you guys one time up by Catalina Island and caught a few. So I wouldn't call myself a calico bass expert, but here's what I'll tell you. One big difference between peacock bass and, for example, like largemouth and smallmouth is they will not hit a lure when it's stopped, right? So like I was just fishing for smallmouth the other day in Oregon. You can slap a popper down and just let it sit and float for 4 or 5 seconds, right? And the smallmouth will come and hit it. That doesn't work in the Amazon. You constantly need to be retrieving. You constantly need to be moving your lure. If they follow it to the boat, just pick it up and throw it right back because they're going to go right back to that zone again. You can catch them. So I would say, one big difference I see, and some guys, especially who are in the bass world, when they come down and fish for peacocks, they struggle with it. They want to stop the lure when they see the peacock coming for it, and you just can't. Like you just can't. It's better just to retrieve it all the way to the boat and throw it again. So that's one huge difference. The second difference I would say is, you're casting near structure all day long, right? Now you guys get some of this if you're throwing to like docks or weed beds or whatever, or kelp beds, I should say. But you really need to dial in your cast. You can't just throw big saltwater casts. I just kind of set the rod up here sometimes and then just make a little overhand cast to kind of keep myself under control. And I always tell people you kind of need to think of yourself as like an NFL quarterback, right? You don't want to throw Hail Marys because you'll get your stuff lost up in the trees. You really need to throw it at like angles and just have those things settle down right below the branches. And so practicing your casting before you come is a really important thing. And I would say those are two of the biggest differences between maybe some of the stuff you guys are doing and down there. And then third, I guess, is just the size of the peacocks. They can get quite large. And so you need to be ready to, hang on for your dear life. You catch a big one, it can really tear some line off your reels.
So I was doing a little bit of reading on the website, and there you guys were talking about the different species and that it's a different species of peacock bass. Is that a different species from Florida? The species that they have in Florida down in Brazil?
Correct. Yeah, I wrote a short article about this, and maybe we could share that or something. But basically, the largest species of peacock bass is only found in Brazil, Colombia, and Venezuela,
Okay.
or the greater Amazon basin, right? That it could not survive outside of that because of the water temperatures. It'll die. So the largest species is the Cichlotamensis. So if you can remember that, they call it the 3-bar peacock. The Rio Negro down in Brazil is the largest peacock bass fishery. That's where all the big boys swim around, the Rio Negro itself and the tributaries. The one you have in Florida, I believe it was a transplant from Guyana, if I remember correctly. I think they've also put it like in Hawaii and Puerto Rico, a few different places. When I wrote the article, this was a year and a half ago, so things could be different. But I think the IGFA record or the Florida state record was around 9 pounds, a little over 9 pounds. So I've seen some pictures of Florida peacocks that are, probably in the tens. So I think there's bigger fish out there, but yeah, it's not going to reach the size that the peacock bass do in Brazil.
My wife's
Completely different
texting me right
species.
now. She wants to know if you're in Brazil currently.
I'm not. No, I'm back home in Idaho. So I was there in early June, but I'm hanging out back at my house.
That's actually a good question. It's a fun one to see what the weather is and all that stuff.
Well,
So
it's funny because we were talking earlier, and I was talking about how my big peacock's 5 pounds, and that's just a baby for what you guys are doing. But it's funny because, like you said, in Florida, I don't think the Florida state record is much more. It's hovering around 10 pounds somewhere. So a 5-pounder out there is actually like a really decent fish.
Yeah, it's a great
But
fish.
just as you go south, it's like very much just an average fish.
Yeah, and to be clear, there is some debate kind of amongst scientists on how many species of peacock bass there are. I saw one report that said 9. I saw another one that said 16. Right? Some of the scientists are kind of classifying some of these peacocks within certain drainages of their own species. Others are kind of lumping them together. So call it a dozen, right? And even within Brazil, we have species that don't reach that larger, 20 plus pounds, right? They look more like the butterfly you're used to in Florida. So,
well, I think in Florida, there's only, is it 1 or 2 species that can survive their winters?
I believe it's just the one.
It's just the one, yeah.
Yep. So it's a great sport fish, and I think it's great for Florida. But panfish and largemouth are technically in the same family, but I wouldn't say that they're the same sport fish, right? In a similar manner, I would say that the peacock bass in Florida is great, but I wouldn't consider it the same species or the same experience as catching a big one down in Brazil.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's
absolutely.
just that just becomes your average.
Yeah, but the difference between 5 and 25 pounds is completely a game changer. But also, on a similar spectrum, striped bass, striper, that live in fast water streams and then open water lakes or the ocean, are built different muscular wise and have substantially different pull powers. So it's like your ecosystem really dictates how and that growth and power kind of go about. But absolutely, I wouldn't even think that the Florida and the Brazilian bass were, the same on any spectrum, really.
Well, the Florida is from Brazil. It's just the
I believe
small
it was
one
a
from
transplant
Brazil.
from Guyana, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, Luke.
I think it was
Guyana.
Yeah. Yeah, if I remember
Where's
correctly, it was either
where's Guyana?
down in South
Africa?
America. So it was either Guyana or Panama. I can't
Oh.
remember which one it was, but it was a species that was acclimated to a little bit higher elevations, and so they moved it up there and were able to successfully transplant it. So again, it's a great sport fish. I don't have anything against it. It's just not the same as experience coming down to Brazil. And one thing too, kind of going back to the habitat, I love the Florida Everglades. I've fished for bass in the Florida Everglades. I think it's a great, ecosystem and all the canals down there. I've got nothing against it, but the Rio Negro, for example, is 2 to 4 miles wide during dry season at times, right? The largest habitat for peacock bass in the world. We're talking about a river that's 500 miles of peacock bass fishing, and then the river's 1 to 4 miles wide everywhere. You have all these lagoons and tributaries and side channels. And then the Amazon basin itself has over 1,000 tributaries, right? Not all of those dumping into the Rio Negro, but quite a few. And so when you take the tributaries and you take the hidden lakes and then you take the width of the river and the length of the river, this is a huge ecosystem, right? When you come and visit, you're going to fish a small fraction of it. So it's not only the fish that are bigger, it's the fishery itself, right?
I just want to make sure that you're not talking to a national audience. You're talking to a strictly Southern California audience. and you can just say Florida sucks and this place is awesome. And there's no comparison. And Florida's a trash can, and come down to South America and it's going to be the best experience ever. You don't
Well,
you don't need to you don't need to
yeah.
dance around it.
All right. Well, the Amazon is quite an experience. I think it should be on every angler's bucket list. You know, it's just there's more. To give you an example, if
Whoa,
you
who's
look at
this
the
guy?
discharge of
Sorry,
look,
late, guys. I was driving.
no problem. But if you look at the discharge of water in the Amazon, when the Amazon leaves and goes into the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, and you compare that to the Mississippi, it's almost 10 times the amount of the Mississippi, right? And it's hard to
Oh
compare that
wow.
exactly because there's flood season, dry season for both river systems, but approximately 10 times the amount of water flows coming out of the Amazon than the Mississippi. So this is a huge freshwater system, right? And you can't even really describe it until you go up in a plane and you look down and you see it all, right? That's when you finally get the perspective and you're like, holy cow, this thing is big. Right?
Let's even move off of peacocks for a minute and talk about some of the other trophy species out there.
Yep.
Because
Great idea.
there's not just as the Amazon on my bucket list, there's like 6 different species out there that's like, I need one of those, I need one of those, I need one of those.
Yeah, so the Amazon has over 3,000 species of freshwater fish, right? And I would say that 50 to 100 of those are actual interesting sport fish that you would want to target, right? And if you some of the crowd favorites are like the arapaima, right? Back in the day, they said they used to catch those up to 400 pounds, or common now is like 200 to
Jeez.
280, right? But those things are freshwater beasts, right? You hook one of those things and it's just hang on for your dear life. You can't use braid that's strong enough to hold them. And then they have the fang payara. Those are kind of those silverfish with they call them the vampire fish. They have those two there. And they have slots in the top of their noses so that those 2 teeth can go into those slots and they can just slash their prey to pieces, basically. They're really a cool predator. And then you have things like bicudas. They kind of look like barracudas, but they're long, slender. They have more of a beak versus the razor teeth. You have the wolffish, which is a really fun sport fish. It's kind of that dark gray, almost black predator fish that lives in the slow canals. Really cool fish to go after because you cruise back in these slow eddies and you throw, topwater lures and they come smash it. And there's electric eels, in the same water. So it's a really cool experience to go do that. And then the giant catfish species. You have the piraibas, the red tails, the jaus, the barbachatas. I mean, some of these fish look like aliens.
Which
And
one's
some of
the
them just
butterfly?
absolutely massive. The butterfly peacock?
The butterfly catfish, isn't there one that's something like that? It's got, or like the angel catfish, it's got a lot more kind of like a wing to it almost.
Wing.
I think the red
I
tail
haven't heard
catfish
of
has that like bigger. They have those bigger, right, Zach? I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
most of those fishes that you're talking about, they sell them at pet shops, right? Like you could get a red tail catfish, which maybe you shouldn't own because it gets out of hand,
Big.
or like.
Yeah.
Are you
I think
talking from
Florida
experience?
got one, didn't they?
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But
yeah, so the catfish are great. I mean, and there's so many species. The largest, the piraiba, you can catch those over 200 pounds. The red tails and the jaus, they grow up to about 100, right? And then there's all these others that are kind of in the 10 to 50 pound class that are really interesting. There's one called a dorada, which is really interesting because they find the adults at the headwaters of the Amazon, but a scientist was only able to locate the eggs down where the Amazon enters the ocean, right? So they're making these huge migrations to spawn, and then they lay their eggs, and their eggs actually fill up with water, and they kind of float down the river, right? So,
Oh,
and then a
crazy.
lot of species of catfish will do this. The red tails will do this, the piraibas, and you'll see them move into these tributary streams. And I have a video that a friend sent me, and there were literally big red tails stacked up like steelhead, sitting in this fast moving water, ready to move up the channel.
That's crazy.
So it's an awesome, place to be, and you'll never know what you're going to catch, and it's just a really cool destination.
So we
Now
got someone in the comments asking what your biggest peacock is. Don't answer that yet. We're saving PBs for the end. So yeah, guys, stay tuned if you want to hear.
No problem. We can do that.
TVs till
So
the end.
I know you just ran and grabbed some lures, so I kind of want to see
Yeah.
those. Is there a better setup than others when fishing? I guess the fishery that you guys just tend to use, where you're like, yeah, those don't work. Yeah, these are going to work. This works, 90%, almost 100% of the time over anything else.
I would say that if it looks like a bait fish and it swims like a bait fish, it's gonna catch fish. And that's true for any species, whether it's payara, wolffish, peacocks. Um, I would say the only species where you're not going to be able to do that are the giant catfish because they're obviously more bottom dwellers. Even then, though,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we catch catfish coming in on the beaches and we see them cruising around and we'll pitch a jig to them or something and hook up with them. So there's even situations where you can catch those. But I get a lot of questions where they say, what lure should I bring down? And my response is always, as long as the hooks and the split rings are saltwater grade, you can probably catch a fish on them, right? That's the only thing that really matters. Forget about the lure. Like if it moves and makes noise or vibrates or swims,
It's
it'll be a
gonna get
problem.
bit.
It's going to get bit, right? So it's
Now-
not
Yeah, we don't
like,
no vision 110s.
yeah, it's not super technical. It's more about, can you place the lure within the structure of the jungle, right? Like more having accurate
Yeah.
cast, having
Yeah.
strong hooks.
So I don't really know too much about Arapaima, and I, for some reason, totally thought they were herbivores, vegetarians. So I'm led to believe that they'll eat a bait fish,
Yep.
and that's crazy because it's like I only ever see those on like TV and exotic shows in general, and I mean they're
You could actually have
the
an
most
Arapaima as a pet.
incredible.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
then
wouldn't
they're
And
just
recommend
then we
it.
can catch them in your
Yeah.
living room.
True story. No.
Yeah, they're the fastest freshwater fish, like the fastest growing freshwater fish, right? So the Arapaima can be a little tricky because they breathe air, right? So they'll come up and surface, and you'll see them break the water and then go back down, and it can be terribly frustrating when you're fishing for them because you'll see these 200-pound Arapaima rolling around you, right? And to not hook up with them, it can drive you mad. So they can be interesting. I've caught them on surface lures. I've caught them in the middle of the water column, and then I've had to just drop, bait down to the very bottom. It really depends on what they're feeding on in the specific area. For example, they have a freshwater shrimp there, and if you're in a place where there's a lot of those, sometimes they just sit on the bottom and eat those, and they're pretty tough to catch, right? Whereas if they're feeding on bait fish, they're going to be more in the middle of the water column moving around, right? But when they take in a fish, they inhale water, kind of like a largemouth bass, right? They don't really like strike at it. They just suck in water, like gallons of water. So the strikes, when they hit it, you'll hear like a big pop, right? You can just see your lure disappear and it's gone. So it's really fun. And they're super exciting sport fish. But you do have to be a little bit careful. For example, when you're handling them, I always tell the clients to let the guides kind of wrangle them. And you need to walk around them and avoid their head and their tail, because we've had guys, try to hold their tails and get smacked in the face or get smacked in the leg, and they just get huge bruises, right? I mean, it potentially could break your bones. So, when you catch one, let the guide hold it, walk around, and kind of come in the middle and take your picture, and then get the heck out of the way so you don't get smacked. So
for the people watching, there is probably 1.5 million different compilations of Arapaima absolutely just missiling out of the water into people. So when Zach says, be careful around them, they are absolutely intense fish and can cause a lot of damage in general.
yeah, their head is so hard, like it's like a rock, right? And they're super powerful. So we've had guys, like I said, get hit in the head or in the leg or even in the man parts, and it just knocks them out, right? It hurts. So you got to be really careful when you're around those fish. I mean, they're awesome, they're really cool. I recommend everybody catching one, but you have to take it easy.
I mean, most in general, right? Most guide services like handle the fish, right? Like especially in like
Absolutely,
freshwater
yeah.
stuff.
No, and
Saltwater,
it's I
they're a
mean,
little bit more hardy, right? But like I think I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I
yeah,
think you
no,
should just let
you're
your
exactly
guide
right.
handle your fish.
And you're it's gonna be you can't like, land a fish yourself anyways. Like you're gonna be reeling it in, trying to get it
Mhm.
close to the bank, and it's gonna run from the bank over and over and over and over again, right? So it's kind of a team effort between you and your guide as you're reeling it, getting it close. He's gonna try and hurry and scoop it, right? And get him up and hold him for you so you can then come and take a picture, right, with it. So there's no way you could, unless it's small, there's no way you could land it yourself anyways.
Yeah.
It'd be terribly
So
difficult. Let's put it that way.
I saw one of your videos. You talk about terminal, like what, not terminal tackle, but like gear to bring. You guys do offer like full gear, right? I don't know if you guys talked about this in the beginning, but your guide service offers full gear. But like break it down. Like if I do want to take my own gear, like what should I expect to bring to like survive in the Amazon?
Yeah, so we do provide all the conventional tackle. The only thing we don't provide is the fly fishing gear. But spinning rods, bait casting rods, lures, we provide all of that. And I think the easiest way to answer that is just to show you a few things. So like any kind of prop bait, surface prop bait like this. These are wood choppers. These are really famous in the Amazon. Their nose is designed to have water spray, right? It kind of creates a rip sound. You kind of hear a when people chug them along. And then that propeller
I've
in the
got
back
one.
is also creating surface disturbance. This is like the most popular thing for peacock bass fishing because the hits are crazy, right? But you could bring a whopper plopper. I don't think the blade would last very long, right? It's going to get crushed. But it'll work, right? If it makes noise and it's moving water, you're going to catch fish. So you could bring literally anything. Again, my only thing is like saltwater grade hooks, saltwater grade rings. Otherwise, you're going to lose them. Like they'll tear the
What about
rods.
like if I'm like Zach, I can't leave without my fishing gear. Like what should I bring?
What rods, what
Yeah,
reels?
like
Oh, I see
what?
what you're saying.
Yeah,
Okay,
How
great,
heavy
great
a
question.
braid do
Okay,
we want? What kind of leader?
so for
because this sounds
peacock, let's talk
intense.
about peacock. I like 50 to 65 pound braid. And for example, if I'm fishing like a 65 pound braid, I like a 50 pound leader, right? And there's a knot that's terribly complicated. I can't even remember how to do it. I have to download a video on my phone to remind myself how to do it. It's called an FG knot, and you connect the braid to the leader, right? And that's pretty much what the guides use down there for that connection.
It's a pretty
So I
simple
use
knot.
that, yeah, and a reel with as
Luke's
much drag as you.
memorized it. So when we come down, we'll just have Luke tie up all our gear. So don't worry.
That's good.
It'll be
I
like
can't
fishing with my
remember
dad
it.
tying all his knots.
There you
You
go.
better
Yeah,
stop.
you can remember.
He's watching this right now, going, "Really, really?"
I tie up
No,
all
but
my
go for
dad's
it.
knots.
What was that?
It's the payback. No, I tie all my dad's knots whenever I go fishing with him. It's a
You guys are
payback.
too
He tied all
much.
my knots
Yeah,
for
you're tying lazy knots for your dad. You're not tying him FG knots, and I know it.
yeah, I
So
just do an overhand knot, and I actually put a bow in it too, and that's how my dad fishes because he's just too good. It doesn't
so
matter if I put
the
knot,
FG
it'll be
knot
hard for
is
him.
your knot to go, right? Your go-to knot for a fish like that.
Yeah, for the braid to leader connection,
Mono
right?
connection,
But yeah,
which
the
I
mono
think
you can do. Sorry, yeah, or you could
I
do
was just
fluoro
saying
too.
speaks wonders for the
I'm
FG knot.
I'm gonna use fluoro.
Yeah, either one's great.
Now,
I've
does
heard
it?
that fluoro is a little more abrasion resistant, but I don't know.
Yeah, does it matter? I mean, what's the water clarity? Uh, is there a difference in using mono to floral or even 40 pound to 60 pound or even like 30 pound mono or floral kind of line change?
Okay, so there's a couple things there. So to be perfectly honest, a lot of times I just tie straight to like the fish are not super picky, and they're not like selective trout or something. These are predators.
Yeah.
They're gonna kill stuff. So a lot of times I don't even bother with the leader and I just go straight to the braid. Some of the guides like to add it, and if they add it, great, they do it. The only time I would maybe say like a leader is like 100% necessary is if you get into like really low still water, right? And it's like really calm. then maybe I'm going to try to up my game. But like honestly, a lot of times they're just shredding the lures, and you're not really worried about it. But to go back to your question about water clarity, there's something I kind of got to explain. So there's 3 types of rivers in the Amazon. There's what we call black water, which you've probably seen like on the peacock bass photos, right? It's kind of like that tea color. And then we have white water. These rivers are coming off the Andes, and they have a lot of sediment, right? So they're kind of muddy. They're kind of like a cafe latte, creamy latte look. And then you have the clear water rivers, which look like a trout stream, right? They're just clear. And most of those clear water rivers are in the southern part of the basin. Most of the whitewater rivers are coming off of the Andes in the east. And then the black water systems are generally coming off of the Rio Negro basin, right? So in terms of clarity, it really kind of depends on what river system you're fishing. The whitewater is pretty much going to always be cloudy. It's going to be kind of murky. The whitewater can be either or. It can be super clear, or if you get a bunch of rain and runoff, it can kind of look like a river that's being blown out by snowmelt, right? And then the black water is pretty much always black. But it's not, you can see still, like if you've ever had like a cup of tea, like herbal tea, right? And then you can see the tea bag at the bottom of the cup, right? And that's how I explain it to people. It's not like you're not going to see the peacocks. You can see them come hit your lure from like 10 to 12
got you.
meters,
Yeah.
right? So it's not that it's murky and that there's sediment blocking it, right? It's the tannins that are being released in the water from all the vegetation that's falling, right? Kind of like if you ever left like your dog dish outside with some water in it during the fall, and the leaves are in there, and you go back to get your bowl, right? The water's kind of nasty.
We don't have fall here.
I forgot about that. Yeah, you guys are Southern California. You don't know what I'm talking about.
For some reason, I thought
it's either summer or winter.
Have dogs here.
I should
spring.
know better. I lived in LA for 4 years too. So.
Yeah, we don't know about tannins in the water, but
I'm
imagining it looks like the Everglade videos.
Yeah, like that tea kind of water. Yeah.
I got it. As a cup of tea. That's the best way to do it.
I got to go back and say that, Daniel, I'm going to be so mad when we finally get enough money to go down south and you try to save a couple bucks and bring mono instead of fluoro. I'm going to lose it.
I don't know why you think I'm going to bring mono when
because you brought up the mono. Because you brought up the mono.
I'm hooked on AFCO floral, and I have been for the last year and a half now. It's pretty much all I ever use, Luke. So how dare you accuse me of such atrocities out here?
So Zach, you just got back from a trip. When we first connected, you said you got back from a trip.
Can I just stop and say you're being so professional, Charlie, and I'm so proud of you.
Welcome to Time in the Water, Zach.
I really like how he's stepping up his game.
Oh my God, dude, stop!
You're making him blush, Luke.
Anyways, no, but
we're not only am I proud of you, everyone that's watching is proud of you. Great job.
You guys are too much. Again, Zach, welcome to Time on the Water. But no, yeah, you got back from a trip. So talk about that. How was it? What were you guys going for?
Sure. Yeah, so we were fishing a river called the Xingu. And this particular stretch of the Xingu is within an indigenous reserve. It's within the Kayapo Reserve. So we were targeting payara, bicuda, giant catfish. We caught a lot of big jau catfish, piranha. There's a couple of species of piranha there. There's a peacock species there that's not the temensis, but a smaller one called the millenier. And then what was cool about this trip is because it's within the Kayapo Reserve, we were able to do some activities with the indigenous people. So we got to
That's
have
what I was just about to ask.
Painted. And we got some really cool tribal painting done on our arms and in our faces. We got to take a hike with the elder, and he would do all these whistle calls with his hands, and he was calling to the spider monkeys, and we were hiking through the jungle tracking the spider monkeys, and he showed us the salt licks where the animals come in, and they have all these trail cams set up to film the jaguars and the pigs and all that stuff. It was awesome. It was amazing. So not only was the fishing really cool.
Do you bring them stuff too?
Can I what?
Did you bring them stuff? I've watched videos where when people go to interact with the tribes, they bring them they on purpose pack
offerings
stuff they're going to give to the
tribe. Offerings.
Or
Yeah,
gifts.
you
Your
can never go
presence.
wrong with soccer balls, and I would recommend bringing them like deflated and then just bringing a pump, like a hand pump, right?
Uh-huh.
So soccer balls, the other thing that they just go through a lot are like flip-flops. So just pairs of flip-flops in different sizes. They always appreciate that, right? Like those are two kind of solids that you can always bring.
So you
Yeah,
did
we
bring
did bring some
gifts.
soccer balls. Yeah, we brought some soccer
That's
balls
cool.
and they immediately started playing with those. So that's a really cool trip if you want to kind of have like a cultural experience plus do some amazing fishing. That was
That's
really neat.
awesome.
Do you ever keep any of the fish, or is this strictly catch and release?
So it depends on the regulations. If you're on an indigenous reserve or a state park, it's going to be way more regulated, right? And some of the species you're allowed to keep, some of them you're not. We will keep a few depending on where we are, right? We always have to follow the regulations depending on where we are. But if the regulations in the area allow it, we will keep a few for like a shore lunch or cook some up at dinner, right? But we have to kind
That
of
sounds
follow
so
the rules
cool.
as everybody does. But it's not like Alaska where you can fillet them and seal vac them and ship them home, right? It's super hot. We're coming in on float planes that we have to watch the weight restrictions. So it's
Yeah,
pretty tough to send fish home.
I'm more down with that shore lunch or that shore cook and then like dinner stuff. I don't need a freezer full of fish. But that's kind of like my thing. Like, oh, we just caught this today. Let's cook it tonight. Let's try it out. Have some fun with it.
Yep.
That I think that's an awesome experience. Is there, I guess, a Brazilian recipe you use for, just while you're down there, or is there? Are you? I guess because I'm a foodie to where it's like I want to know about like any
Yeah.
exotic.
We call
Just
this segment of the episode, How Do You Cook Your Fish?
I mean, honestly, we just cook ours over the fire. They have a root there called a manioc, which they kind of grind down to a powder. And so we grill the fish. We have that manioc powder. Then we have rice, and then we have kind of I wouldn't call it a pico de gallo, but that's kind of the closest thing I can explain. And so we have those three things, and we just eat that over the fire. But in terms of kind of a larger culinary experience, kind of like Texas or Tennessee or Kansas City has great barbecue. In Manaus, everything's on the river, so they have these fish houses in Manaus where you can order any kind of fish you want, right? You sit down and there's just a huge menu. And one of my favorites is a fish called a tambaqui. It eats nuts and fruits and a lot of
What?
plant material. And it's kind of like a big
Dude, I
permit,
bet that's
right?
good.
It's a big round permit. And they
is
fillet
it
it
the
right
one
down the
with like
middle.
the human looking teeth?
Molar teeth, yeah, like molar teeth.
Those
And
things are
and they
freaky.
Eating
fillet it down the
nuts.
middle. And it's kind of like the Manaus Sunday dish. Like when you go around on Sunday, everybody's out cooking their tambakis, kind of like we do barbecues, right? And what's cool about it is the ribs are big enough you can kind of just pluck those suckers off and eat the meat off of them, right? So they just fillet it in half, laid out there. There's rice, beans, that pico dish I was kind of describing, cold soda or beer or whatever, and it's awesome. It's really good. So tambaki's great. They have a freshwater shrimp that they do like a soup with. Same with piranha.
Oh.
Piranha soup's really popular down there. So there's a
Piranha.
ton of recipes. I mean, I couldn't even go into them all. They've got freshwater sardines there. There's a
Well,
lot of
That's
different.
interesting. Are they actually
Yeah,
they're part of the sardine family?
yeah. So
Or do they
if you
just call them
if you
sardines? Like
no,
for example,
they're
calico bass aren't really a bass.
right. Yeah. So to kind of explain that with a bigger answer, the Amazon used to have the ocean where the Amazon did a lot of that was ocean, right? And then the Andes popped up and it kind of screwed everything up, right? It kind of cut the river systems off from the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
And it created a big basin, right? And eventually that water drained into the basin and popped out into the Atlantic Ocean, right? Now I'm explaining an elementary version of what a scientist could explain. But if you go to the Amazon, there's a bunch of species of stingrays. There's 2 species of freshwater dolphin. There's a fish that we call the pescata that looks like a redfish. It looks like a drumfish, right?
Have you got to
There's
see the
sardines.
freshwater dolphin?
Yeah, oh yeah, you'll see them everywhere. If you're on the
That's
on the
so
Rio
sick.
Negro, they'll hide under the boat and wait for you to release a fish, and then go nab it. They're
The,
super
the pink
smart.
ones,
So
right?
The pinks are super smart. Yeah, the gray
Oh
ones, they're
man.
kind of a smaller one that
Oh,
looks
there's
just
a
like
gray
one
one
of
there
your
as
guys'
well.
dolphin. Yeah, it looks like the ones down in Southern California, just small, and it kind
I
of
like the way he's saying it. Like, there's a gray one.
Yeah, yeah. But
It's
coming
just
back to the
gray.
point, a lot of the fish species, right? Evolved over time from common ancestors that were in the ocean originally, right? Electric eels, that's another one. I've seen freshwater crabs way up into the tributaries of the Amazon, right? There's all these species that link back to the ocean. So it's a really cool ecosystem because of that.
By the way,
Dude.
earlier you were talking about the different water clarities, and you said the cafe au lait one, and I had to ask my wife to get me a coffee.
I already finished my coffee. I started the show with it.
I was like, let me mute this real quick.
So this is a very unique episode, right? You have a charter business. How do you book a trip with you? Like how do we book a trip? Like if somebody's watching this episode, it's mid episode, how would you book a trip?
Yeah, the easiest way is to go to acuteangling.com, and there's a contact form there.
Yeah.
Yep, you just click on that link, shoot us an email. We'll reach out to you. We also have a contact number. You can give us a ring. I'm extension 1. I will say that I'm on the road a lot, either at shows or down in the Amazon. So you might have better luck reaching somebody else. But I will answer your calls when I get back. But yeah, I mean, we're available Monday through Friday, and you just have to reach out to us.
Sorry to interrupt. Do you have trips all year round? I guess, is there a season that you fill up and you take people, or is it an all year round thing?
Yeah, great question. So there are trips at different times of the season. We basically just don't have a trip in May and April, right? The rest of the year we've got
that's the wet season.
Yeah, pretty much the whole Amazon in that area is going to be pretty drenched. Now, kind of going back to what I explained before, so if you look at the Amazon basin, like if you were looking at Google Earth and you zoomed out, you would see the Guiana Shield, right, which is a weathered mountain system to the north. You would see the Andes on the east, and you would see the Brazilian Highlands, which again is a weathered mountain range to the south, right? And all the rivers, if you're in the north, are running south, right? And the north rivers to the south are running north, and then the ones to the east are running west, right?
When you say weathered mountain range, are you saying that they're like older?
They're an old mountain range that's just had
where the Andes is a newer mountain range.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. So what that does is it creates this big bowl, right? Like the Amazon is essentially just a huge bowl where all these rivers are dumping down into it. And what also happens is the cloud patterns and the weather patterns can move kind of in a circular rotation, right? So for example, that place I was fishing on the Xingu in June just recently, you wouldn't want to fish it when we're fishing for peacock bass in January on the Rio Negro, right? So you really have to know where you're at in the basin, because I mean, to give you a perspective, the Amazon's almost the size of Australia, right? So This is a big place. Rivers are fishing better at different times, and like I said, there's 1,000 tributaries, and most of these tributaries are bigger than any rivers we have in the U.S. So it's
most of us haven't been to Australia. Explain that in LA terms. Is that like as big as downtown, or are we talking like from LA to San Diego?
Bigger than downtown. I think Australia's
bigger. I mean, you'll just have to open Google Earth and look at that big old
and go look at it.
Yeah, I mean it's a big place. I mean, we're talking.
Yeah,
I don't know what Australia is compared to the lower 48, but it's huge.
Joking around, but Australia is pretty big in the grand scheme. I'm trying to.
Is it bigger than Texas?
Yeah, I want to say it's Texas and maybe a couple surrounding states.
Dude, are you being sarcastic? Can you just say it's bigger than Texas? Why do you have to say, is it bigger than Texas?
Is it?
I think I
don't know.
Is with a couple
Probably is.
States.
It's quite big. It's quite big.
I don't know how big Texas is.
I mean, the Australia is the closest example I've ever heard. They said it was about as big as Australia. So, and again though, that's the entire basin. So that includes other countries like Bolivia and Colombia, right? Where Brazil's not the only country with the Amazon in it.
Yeah. Shoot, I had a question.
Yeah, I think that's one of your bucket list trips, right, Luke? Going to the Amazon?
100%.
There was a point in time when he was
on the top of the list.
There was a point when he was just dumping videos like, look at this, look at that, look at this. Oh, look. I'm like,
if it's a rainy day, or maybe I'm a little sad, or maybe I'm a little happy.
He watches Amazon videos.
Amazon videos.
However Luke's feeling, because clearly he just went through the whole spectrum of sad and happy. Rainy day, sunshiny day. He's sending pictures of Brazil in the rainforest.
So
Yeah.
for a while, I thought peak, like Luke said, right? Calico bass are not bass, right? I thought peacock were bass, but they're not,
No,
right?
they're cichlid. Yeah, they're
Sickly,
cichlid.
yeah.
And they're really interesting in that so they kind of follow this reproduction cycle where during the dry season they'll start spawning, right? The male and the female will pair off. And you'll see, I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of peacocks where there's like a big lump on their head.
Big lump, yeah.
That's the male, and it's a storage of fat in his head, basically. Because when they start spawning, they really don't eat, right? They're in defense mode. Like they'll be defending their nests, and then when the fry hatch, they stay with the fry for a while, and so they're basically living off their fat reserves. So you will catch peacock that look like a completely different species, which we call a paca, and they're kind of like a maroon, kind of like the color of my chair actually back here, and then they have these white spots. And those peacocks are not ready to spawn at all, right? They're in the mode of putting on weight. They're hunting. They're eating, and then they go through this transformation where you've probably seen the peacocks with like the 3 bars, and they're kind of yellow and kind of have flecks
Green.
of orange,
Yeah.
right? So those peacocks are getting ready to spawn, or they are actually spawning, and then you can see them in both stages. And if you look at the paca closely, the one that looks like the chair with the spots, if you look really close, you can still see the bars. And if you look really close at a full-blown, what we call a Sioux, the one with the 3 bars and the lump, you can still see a few of those dots, right? So they go through this transformation, and when certain fish spawn and when others don't is really dependent on water cycles and how much food they've eaten and age and that sort of thing. But it's kind of cool because you'll catch one peacock and it'll look completely different than the other.
So what's more fun, spawning peacock or not spawning peacock?
So the Sioux, or the 3 bar, that are either defending the nest or have their babies, they're bigger, they're fatter because they put on more weight. But the pacas are by far more aggressive, like they hit harder and fight harder, but they're going to weigh less, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of a catch-22. But I think in terms of fight, the paca's the best
because they're all spawned out. Oh no, those are the ones that.
And now they're eating. They're hungry. They're ready to put on.
They're super aggressive.
They're super aggressive. They're pounding food, right? Now the Sioux can be really fun.
Sorry, what I was saying is with that during that feeding time, the fishing's probably a little bit more full swing on just about anything. So that I can see how that's a little bit more fun.
Yeah. Now the Sioux, they still hit, right? They're still super aggressive. It's just that their strikes are going to be more out of a territorial or aggression streak, right? So that's why those wood choppers work really well, because you're making tons of noise spraying water, and they just want to kill it and get it away.
Yeah,
right?
like, get away from the kids.
Yeah,
get away from the kids, right? In fact, sometimes you strip those wood choppers and they'll actually slap it with their tail. They actually won't hit it. And I've had the wood choppers come flying back at me because they just swat it, right? Then you throw it back in and they swat it again.
dude.
And they'll either just hit it with their heads or their tails, right? And you just have to keep throwing until they finally come and hit it with their mouth. So they're still super aggressive. They're just aggressive for a different reason than feeding, right?
Yeah.
So, anyways, fun sport to fish either way, whether it's a paca or the Sioux.
Yeah, it's the same thing with. I was gonna ask the question to Luke and Daniel, because it's kind of like us fishing calico. Do you guys feel like calico hit harder when they're spawning, or regardless?
I'm not a scientist.
I don't
Go ahead,
fish,
Daniel.
Charlie.
Yeah, Daniel doesn't fish. He only competes.
But
that sounds way cooler.
Again, there
not a scientist. You fish a lot.
Well, there might be someone who's like, no, that's absolutely incorrect. I don't think calico are guarding their fry. I don't think they're on beds. I think their spawning happens a little different. And you've been out there with me. When calico are spawning, they're still eating.
Yeah.
I think, and again, I could be wrong and someone could correct me, But from my observation, it seems like they're spawning and eating, so we're kind of getting the best of both worlds. They're all
Yeah, because
they're all
then
pumped
you get
up. They're
those.
spawning. They're eating. They're making a. It looks like someone's pouring yogurt all over the boat. It's wild.
Yeah, it is wild.
Grass.
I'm trying to be
But
as little as uncrass as possible. But Charlie, I don't think you've been on the boat during a
Gross.
spawn. Charlie's been on the boat during a spawn, and it's disgust. It's a crazy mess, and it's
no,
the
it
most
is. It is.
insane bite. It's the most insane bite
That's
you'll
what I'm
ever
saying.
have.
I feel like, and then believe me, this has a point to it, Zach.
It's because the lack of beds.
So now, yeah. So now, have you experienced a fish like that, like in the Amazon, like where they're spawning and they're eating at the same time? And do you feel like they're more aggressive?
You know, to be honest, the peacock is probably the only one because it's so easy to know when they're spawning. You
They're
could see
spawning.
it in their bodies, right? I don't see it because I'm not a fish scientist and there's so many species of fish, so I don't know if I can even tell like when a payara is spawning or not, right? And the giant catfish, like I said, they're kind of migratory and they're actually
You could
migratory when the
tell.
water's high. So I actually don't know unless I'm holding a fish and like you said, it's milk coming out, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't know. But what I can tell you is every time I go fishing, they bite. So they're always willing to hit a lure, whether it's out of aggression or they're actually feeding. Every species I've targeted is always getting after it. And
Getting after it.
Do you have a favorite fish when you go down? Something that you're like, oh, this is what I want to target when I go down.
so I would say it's hard not to love peacocks. So I'm going to set that aside, right, and talk about something else.
Because that's number one.
The peacocks are just awesome. I mean, I always say they're like smallmouth bass that are 4 times the size and pumped with steroids, right? They're amazing.
Dude.
But
I'm down with that.
a fish that no one's ever heard of is called a matrincha, and there's another one called a jaturana. And you can catch them like on a fly, and they feed on at least the matrincha will feed on like grasshoppers or fruit. So like a lot of times when I want to take a break from the big predatory guys, I'll boat up this little tributary that is maybe just 20 feet wide. I'll kill the motor and then just float down and flight fish for matrincha and jaturana. And there's another one called a pacu, which is kind of like a round fish. And I would say that that's kind of a super fun experience for me.
What weight fly
Because
rod are
I'm
you
catching
using?
these fish. Usually somewhere between a 6 and 8, depending on how big the fish are. There's another pacu species called a pacu bohasha, and it sits at the edge of rapids. And at a certain time of year, when the algae and the basically like a seaweed is coming off the rocks, right? The water's dropping and the seaweed's coming off the rocks. They'll sit in the rapids and eat this seaweed. And I will put like a little. You could do like a marabou jig, like a little marabou jig. I use a little marabou fly.
I've
right?
seen videos of them fishing for those.
Yeah, we've got some, and we're actually coming out with a new video for the Jingu, and there's this whole segment on this. But you just throw it up and like drift it through the rapids, and then hook them, and it's super exciting because first of all, they're a big, powerful, round fish that sits in the current, and so they've got a lot of strength, right? And then you're standing usually, I wouldn't call it a whitewater rapid, but moving water, and it's taking off. So you're trying to run and land the fish, and it's moving around, right? Like it's a hoot. It's really fun. So I like that. When that pacu bohasha opportunity is there, I really enjoy fishing for those. So I wouldn't say I have like a particular fish, but I just think it's awesome that I'm down there catching all these fish species that no one even knows exist. Like I literally have the whole stream, these little tributaries that everybody else is out fishing for payara, wolfish, or whatever. I'm fishing the whole thing and I have it all to myself, and no one's targeting them, right? And they're all really cool sport fish. So I think that's maybe, instead of having one species I like outside of the peacock bass, it's just knowing that there's all these different things I can catch, and the 99% of the people in the world don't even know what they are. Right? That's pretty cool.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
So are you primarily on a vessel, or you guys fish from shore as well? Like your particular guide.
Yeah, so I should explain. We have 2 pretty distinct types of fisheries in the Amazon basin. we have the flooded basin fisheries where the largest species of peacock bass are, right? And you've probably seen those where we stay like on houseboats and we move around, and that's where the Blackwater rivers are, right?
Yeah.
That's where the biggest species of peacock bass. You're pretty much going to be fishing from a boat 95% of the time on those. Now, as you go up into the tributaries and you go even to like the second tier tributaries, we move into what I call a multi-species type fishery, right? And that's actually where you catch the payara and the wolffish and the bicudas and the giant catfish go up there. It's actually easy to catch the big catfish up in those. So I wouldn't call them like mountain streams, but think of it like kind of like that, right? There's rapids, there's rocks. These rivers are dropping down into the basin, and those trips are completely distinct. And if you're on a peacock bass focus trip in the lower elevation rivers, 95% of boat. If you're on a multi-species trip, there's opportunities to get out and walk and wade and stand on rocks and fish for those pacu bohashas and matrinchas. And sometimes when you're swinging through a big payara hole, you'll get off on a rock. So you fish still primarily from a boat, but you can get out and wade around, which is really cool. And one thing that everybody's always terrified about are piranhas. There's like maybe one
I'm
recorded
more worried about caiman.
piranha attack. There's like one recorded piranha attack, and it was like from people who crashed a bus into the river and were there for hours. They were already, pronounced dead, and some piranhas ate on them. But they're not something to worry about. The only time you really need to get concerned is if they're in a body of water and they can't get out, right? They become savages at that point. But we swim in the water, we enjoy it. It's really refreshing and nice. In fact, the aquarium trade used to get a lot of its fish from the Amazon. So there's a lot of really cool little tetras and things to see with a snorkel mask, right? So, anyways, that was a long story to answer your question. But
what about anacondas? Is there anything?
Again.
Also, with that, is there anything other that is dangerous that we should be worried about?
Honestly, so we've been doing this for 30 years now. And our medical evacuations have all been due to alcohol or a pre-existing condition, like somebody has a heart problem or something like that. We've never had a snake bite. Anacondas, for example, are not going to attack you. They're not like pythons where they can just eat you, right? That's Hollywood, right? We've never had anyone torn up from piranhas or anything like that, right? Like, we're more concerned when people show up that they're hitting the bar tab too hard at the end of the night than we are anything. That they're not putting on sunscreen. That's another one. People are like, oh, I'm so used to the sun from Florida or California or Texas, right? They don't put sunscreen on. They just get scorched. They get heat exhaustion, right? Like,
and then that just kills your whole trip, huh?
It kills your stuff, yeah. And so the stuff that me and the staff are concerned about are not piranhas and anacondas and spiders and all that crap that everyone worries about. It's that people are drinking too much and not drinking enough water and not putting sunscreen on, taking those kind of precautions. So yeah,
drinking too much and then falling down on the boat.
Yeah, I mean, if you go on our Instagram right now, you'll see tons of videos of me like laying in the river, drinking a soda, or me jumping off of our yacht and swimming in the water. Like, we swim there all the time and enjoy it. Now, the one thing that the guides are worried about, I am worried about, everyone's worried about, are electric eels. I don't know if you've ever seen videos of those. And those are found in super stagnant water, like think Florida Everglades water, right? Then usually they are in places where like wolffish will be. So if you're fishing for wolffish, the guide will not let you get out of the boat, right? Like, even if you hang your lure up in a tree, he's like, no, you're not going to get it, right?
Because they're that level of electric.
Yeah, how like 10,000 volts or something, like something crazy.
Like I've heard it being compared to like being shocked by like a defibrillator. So it's not going to kill you unless you have a heart condition or something, but it could knock you out and you could drown, right? So it would not be a pleasant experience. So that's the one thing I would say that you see like real fear from the guides. So there are certain like creek mouths and stuff where they're like, you are not getting in the water here, right?
Yeah.
Everything else they don't really.
It's good to be educated on, and it seems like they have a pretty good grasp on, I guess, the living spaces of electric eels. But oh my gosh, those things are so gnarly.
They're super. I got this video one time. We were just sitting in this little creek fishing for wolffish, and this thing came out of the seaweed, popped its head up and looked at me, and then went back down. And this thing must have been like 7 or 8 feet long. And I got the whole thing on my cell phone.
Dude,
and they're leery, like they're freaky, and you're just like, how is this weird creature in this little tributary?
Dude, the whole time we're talking, like, who's that who's that fishing guy that has a show on
Jeremy
what's
Wade.
his name? The guy
Jeremy
that
Wade.
fishes like crazy Amazon fishes and
Jeremy Wade.
dude.
There was Jeremy Wade, and there was another guy. What was his name? I can't remember him. He did a few. Cyril Choke. He was doing that for a while too. Both those guys.
So
Yeah.
he doesn't do that anymore?
Jeremy
I
Wade.
don't
don't
know.
think so.
No,
Yeah.
I think
he caught every
They had to
fish.
stop. They
He
had to
caught
stop
it.
producing the show because he caught everything.
He caught everything.
They literally went and did as many seasons as they possibly could, and they were like, "All right, Jeremy,
We're out of
there's
fish.
there's no more river monsters. We're done here." I mean, talk about I don't know,
What a life.
like a lifestyle,
Right?
Yeah,
That's a
what
life, man.
Like, just like, oh, hey, yeah, caught it, done. Oh my gosh! But
Crazy.
yeah, so when we were talking about
Yeah, river
Arapaima,
monsters.
all I could think about is the time that he got hit by the Arapaima, and like I think cracked a rib or something. But I mean, it really.
Yeah.
Well, I've
it
seen
really
videos where they
went
feed them and it's like crazy, man. They just pop.
Yeah,
Boom.
they have because they suck in that much water, but they're just so quick at it too. It's crazy.
I used to have one as a pet.
Yeah. The one thing too that I should say that is a dangerous thing are just the teeth of the fish, right? So like the pyara is an obvious one. You can
Don't
just look
lip
at
'em.
it and see, but even the peacocks, I wouldn't lip them, right? Like they've got some pretty sharp, I would call them teeth, but kind of like how you get like bass thumb, right, with largemouth, except for
Yeah.
it's on a higher degree.
It's
I
like
wouldn't do it.
like 40 grit sandpaper.
Really?
Yeah, piranha you do not mess with. Their teeth. You use boga grips for all those species, and then even the pacus I was talking about, they have more of like a human molar teeth, but those things can grind and crunch. Like if you stuck your finger in there, they'd probably break
It's
it.
like sheep's head, huh? Probably, huh?
Yeah,
Well,
like sheephead. Yeah, so you got to keep your fingers away from there.
Don't
Yeah,
lip them.
a lot of them
Charlie,
also have
we're
intense bite power too, because they have to
Don't
crush
lip them.
stuff.
Charlie,
So,
we're in
All
your
right.
favorite part of the episode.
We're gonna talk PVs. So let's talk about that peacock real quick. That's on the thumbnail. I think that's your personal best.
That one's not.
Is that your
actually.
personal
my
best?
Personal best was my personal best is 24 pounds. That one was just a 20.
Oh,
That was a recent photo.
you almost got. You said 27 was the world record.
That's no. 29.4 is the world record. I think we were talking about the Kuri earlier, the river, and I said on that
Mhm.
river our best is a 27.
Mm.
So everyone's trying to hunt.
Can you
for that
imagine
30,
holding a 27-pound peacock bass?
Charlie, no, I
know.
can't.
Well,
It's so out of this world that I cannot imagine.
I can imagine it.
I could.
Yeah, sure you can, Luke.
I'm picturing
So
it right
what?
now.
Like out of all the fishes that we talked about, have you fished for calico before?
Yeah, he fished for
just
calico
once,
at Catalina.
I don't know if you guys
What's your
know Stoked
PV?
on fishing.
Yeah.
Calico? I don't know. I don't think it was very big. Probably like a pound. I went with Stoked
Charlie,
on fishing. They come
how
down
we
and fish with
were-
us, and
Oh, nice.
you know- Charlie, you know how we were praising you for being professional and all that stuff? There's so many different fish we can talk about for PBs right now. Let's go through Arapaima. What's your
That's what I was saying, like, what
fish
the-
on all of them?
The fish we talked about. Yeah. What's your biggest from all the fish that we talked about?
yeah,
Your
the
personal
Arapaima,
best.
we didn't have like a net scale to weigh it or whatever. I'll just say that it took a couple of us to hold it, to even have a picture. So they estimated it to be like 165 to 185, right? I don't know exactly
Mhm.
how big it was. I think I actually sent you guys that picture to use as one of the thumbnails.
Yeah.
But he was a big boy. But that's definitely not the biggest we've caught. I mean, we had clients who've caught them north of 200 pounds. And I would say nowadays, if you catch one over 200, that's a good fish. Like we don't, they used back in the day, they said they used to be like 300 or 400 pounds. Arapaima's, I wouldn't call it endangered, but it does need to be protected now because it's a delicious fish to eat.
Oh, really?
And people can just harpoon those suckers
Yeah,
when they come up
so-
to breathe. It's
so
like
it's
an
not
Amazon cow, right? Everybody wants it.
Yeah.
So
It's not like tarpon where
luckily-
it tastes bad.
no, it's actually quite good.
Well, some
one
people might think it's good.
Yeah,
What?
the one thing Brazil has done is you can no longer harvest wild fish and sell them commercially. Like if you're going to
Mhm.
sell commercially, you have to raise them. Which arapaima are actually great for aquaculture. They're great. They put on a lot of weight quickly.
So they are like
so I'm glad to
cows.
see. They are like cows. They're like Amazon cows. Yeah. So I mean, if you think about it from like a kind of, you're just kind of like a person living along the river, you don't have much, and some 250-pound animal surfaces in front of you, and
Yeah,
and you're like, yeah,
absolutely.
I'm gonna get that thing.
And
Yeah.
it's delicious.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's delicious. It's
I mean,
really good. It's got
feed
a
the
nice,
whole-
firm white meat. I gave it to some of the
Dude.
clients, and they're like, "Oh, is this chicken?" I was like, "No, it's fish." They're like, "No way." I'm like, "Yes, it's fish. I promise." And they're like, "It's this big." I'm like, "I know, but it's a fish steak."
So do you have any world records?
Do I personally?
Yeah.
I don't know. I could probably keep, like, IGFA has all those line classes and stuff. I haven't participated in that. Maybe I could, but it's not really on my
It's not
radar
really your
right now.
thing.
Yeah, you're there for the fun of
Yeah.
it, and that's what you're doing. You're enjoying yourself. Now,
Yeah.
we kind of ran out of time just because there's so much to talk about. We'll just have to probably have you on again and talk a little bit more about yourself, because I was like, I want to know, one, how you got into guiding in Brazil, but also just your fishing career in general, because I don't know, because we didn't get to talk about it, but I don't assume you started fishing in Brazil.
Yeah, this one
Yeah.
was more about
More about the guiding
charter.
service.
The
Yeah.
next one will have to be more about you as an angler.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, why don't
excited
you
regardless.
well, why don't we do an episode down in the Amazon on the houseboat or something? We can chat. We can
Dude,
fish.
that would be
Sold.
sick. That would be
Okay,
sick.
I think
Do
we
you
need to do it like on the Rio Negro or something.
Do you get good
Do you
enough
get
signal
reception?
down there?
We have, thanks to Starlink, we've got Wi-Fi in all our operations.
Oh,
Dude,
nice.
that's so sick.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
pretty
so we
cool,
can literally
man.
do a
For everybody
Facebook
watching,
Live from the jungle if you want to.
dude, that would be crazy. I wonder how many people have done that.
Nobody. Just
Well,
us.
I mean, nobody that I know of.
Exactly. So just us.
All right, we'll see you
Yeah.
guys next time live from
In the
Negro.
Amazon. All right,
Perfect.
guys.
Thank you.
Zach, thanks a lot for hopping on with
Everybody
us.
that's still here, the
Bye.
link is in the description. You can find it, but you can also just Google acuteangling.com if you're interested. They've got a bunch of different just exposés kind of to figure out what you're looking for, and it's a lot of fun to just read through. It's really cool. But yes, the next Glizzies at the Ramp will be in Brazil. We'll be doing Brazilian barbecue in the Amazon. So see you all next week.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot for you guys that stayed.
Thank you
Zach, again, thanks a lot.
Good, everybody.
And stay
Thanks
out
so
there.
much for
Go
having
get
me.
some fish. Peace
All
out.
right, thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you.